Hello, for today's assignment, you can either download the PDF Chapter 11, Section 2, Ancient Egypt, and read it for yourself, or if you wish to watch this video, I will read through it and talk about it as we go. At the conclusion of reading this section, there is Ancient Egypt 11.2 quiz, so you can even have that open as we're going today. So we'll start on the top of page 285, Religion and Egyptian Life. Worshipping the gods was a part of daily life in Egypt, but the Egyptian focus on religion extended beyond people's lives. Many customs focused on what happened after people died. The gods of Egypt. The Egyptians practiced polytheism. Before the first dynasty, each village worshipped its own gods. During the Old Kingdom, however, Egyptian officials expected everyone to worship the same god, though how people worship the gods might differ from place to place. The Egyptians built temples to the gods all over the kingdom. Temples collected payments from both worshippers and the government. These payments enabled the temples to grow more influential. Over time, certain cities became centers for the worship of certain gods. In the city of Memphis, for example, people prayed to Ptah, the creator of the world. The Egyptians worshipped many gods besides Ptah. They had gods for nearly everything, including the sun, the sky, and the earth. Many gods blended human and animal forms. For example, Anubis, the god of the dead, had a human body but a jackal's head. Other major gods included, and you can see 4 of them below, having the body of a human and the head of an animal. Ra, the sun god. Osiris, the god of the underworld. Isis, the goddess of magic. Horus, a sky god and god of the pharaohs. Thoth, the god of wisdom. And Geb, the earth god. Egyptian families also worshipped household gods at shrines in their homes. Page 286, emphasis on the afterlife. Much of Egyptian religion focused on the afterlife or life after death. The Egyptians believed that the afterlife was a happy place. Paintings from Egyptian tombs show the afterlife as an ideal world where all the people are young and healthy. The Egyptian belief in the afterlife stemmed from their idea of Ka, or a person's life force. When a person died, his or her Ka left the body and became a spirit. The Ka remained linked to the body and could not leave its burial site. However, it had all the same needs that the person had when he or she was living. It needed to eat, sleep, and be entertained. A simple way to remember that is the Ka is like someone's spirit. To fulfill the Ka's needs, people filled tombs with objects for the afterlife. These objects included furniture, clothing, tools, jewelry, and weapons. Relatives of the dead were expected to bring food and beverages to their loved ones' tombs so the Ka or spirit would not be hungry or thirsty. Later on, we are going to do an assignment where you get to draw a little bit, and it would be, if you were a mummy, what things would you bring with you in the afterlife? Because the Egyptians believed that whatever was left or buried with them, they could use or they could have in the afterlife. So this brings us to burial practices. Egyptian ideas about the afterlife shaped their burial practices. For example, the Egyptians believed that a body had to be prepared for the afterlife before it could be placed in a tomb. This meant that the body had to be preserved. If the body decayed, its spirit could not recognize it. That would break the link between the body and the spirit. The Ka would then be unable to receive the food and drink it needed. To help the Ka or spirit, Egyptians developed a method called embalming to preserve bodies and to keep them from decaying. Egyptians preserved bodies as mummies, or specially treated bodies wrapped in cloth. Embalming preserves a body for many, many years. A body that was not embalmed after death decayed far more quickly. Embalming was a complex process that took several weeks to complete. In the first step, embalmers cut open the body and removed all organs except for the heart. We will learn much more about this shortly to come. I have a special PowerPoint dedicated to it. Embalmers stored the removed organs in special jars called canopic jars. Next, the embalmers used a special substance to dry out the body. natron salt. They later applied some special oils. The embalmers then wrapped the dried out body with linen cloths and bandages, often placing special charms inside the cloth wrapping. Wrapping the body was the last step in the mummy making process. Once it was completely wrapped, a mummy was placed in a coffin called a sarcophagus, which you see over here. Only royalty and other members of Egypt's elite or people of wealth and power could afford to have mummies made. Peasant families did not need this process. They buried their dead in shallow graves at the edge of the desert. The hot, dry sand preserved the bodies naturally. So what you see at the top of this page is something we're going to talk about later, but this is the afterlife process. So you see Osiris, green guy, god of the underworld. So he's the main god that oversees the whole process of judgment here. So he's waiting to judge a dead person's soul. The god Anubis, who has the head of a jackal, is weighing a person's heart against the feather of truth. So essentially, Egyptians believe that, you see the little heart here, the more that you sin, the heavier your heart becomes. So the more you've sinned or the more wrong or bad you have done in your life, your heart will be heavier than the feather of truth, and you will be cast into an afterlife of peril. If your heart is light because you've done great things in life, it will weigh the same amount as the feather of truth, and you will get to enjoy a happy afterlife. The pyramids. The Egyptians believed that burial sites, especially royal tombs, were very important. For this reason, they built spectacular monuments in which to bury their rulers. The most spectacular were the pyramids, which were huge stone tombs with 4 triangle-shaped sides that met in a point on top. The Egyptians built the first pyramids during the Old Kingdom. Some of the largest pyramids were built during that time. Many of these huge Egyptian pyramids are still standing. The largest is the Great Pyramid of Khufu near the town of Giza. It covers more than 13 acres at its base and stands 481 feet high. So if you've ever been to Cedar Point, that is higher than the Millennium Force. This one pyramid took thousands of workers and more than 2 million limestone blocks to build. Like all the pyramids, it is an amazing example of Egyptian engineering, the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. Building the pyramids. The earliest pyramids did not have the smooth sides we usually imagine when we think of pyramids. They're actually called step pyramids. The Egyptians began building the smooth-sided pyramid we usually see around 2700 BC. The steps of these pyramids were filled and covered with limestone. The burial chamber was located deep inside the pyramid. After the pharaoh's burial, workers sealed the passages to this room with large blocks. Historians do not know for certain how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. What is certain is that such massive projects required a huge labor force. As many as 100,000 workers may have been needed to build just one pyramid. The government paid the people working on the pyramids. So as you can see on the bottom, there's some theories about how the pyramids were built, but built out of limestone guarded by a sphinx, which we will talk about later with the riddle of the Sphinx. Giant ramps made to get the limestone blocks to the top. These are all theories on how the pyramids were built, but no scientist has ever come up with a stable understanding of exactly how they were constructed. Just got an email. All right, moving on to 290, last page here. Wages for working on construction products were paid in goods, such as grain, instead of money, however. For years, scholars have debated how the Egyptians moved the massive stones used to build the pyramids. Some scholars think that during the Nile's flooding, builders floated the stones downstream directly to the construction site. Most historians believe that workers used brick ramps and strong wooden sleds to drag the stones up the pyramid once when they were at the building site. Significance of the pyramids. Burial in a pyramid showed a pharaoh's importance. Both the size and shape of the pyramid were symbolic. Pointing to the sky above, the pyramids symbolized the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The Egyptians wanted the pyramids to be spectacular because they believed the pharaoh, as their link to the gods, controlled everyone's afterlife. Making the pharaoh's spirit happy was a way of ensuring happiness in one's own afterlife. To ensure that the pharaohs remained safe after death, the Egyptians sometimes wrote magical spells and hymns on tombs. Together, these spells and hymns are called pyramid texts. The first such text, addressed to Ra, the sun god, was carved into the pyramid of King Unas. He was a pharaoh of the Old Kingdom, and it read, "Ra, this Unas comes to you, a spirit indestructible. Your son comes to you, this Unas. May you cross the sky united in the dark. May you rise in light land where you shine." The builders of Unas's pyramid wanted the god Ra to look after their leader spirit. Even after death, the Egyptians' pharaoh was important to them. Summary and preview. As you've read, during the Old Kingdom, new political and social orders were created in Egypt. Religion was important, and many pyramids were built for pharaohs. In the next section, you will learn about Egypt's Middle and New Kingdoms. So again, at the conclusion of this, take the Chapter 11, Section 2 quiz on Canvas. And the Great Pyramid we talked about, there's a Google Earth tour for you to enjoy when you are done. Thank you.